I now call on Professor Kerry-Lee Krause, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Student Life and Deputy Provost, to introduce Mr Ben Chan, who's quite kindly agreed to deliver the occasional address.
This afternoon, the University welcomes Ben Chan as guest speaker. Ben is the Chief Customer Experience and Commercial Officer of Reece Group, Australia's largest plumbing and bathroom supplies business. Ben has bachelor degrees in engineering and in commerce from the University of Melbourne, where he graduated at the top of both his classes in 2003. Upon graduation, Ben joined McKinsey & Company as a strategy consultant. After 2.5 years at McKinsey, Ben was admitted to Stanford University to study for an MBA. Upon graduation from Stanford, he became a foreign exchange trader for Goldman Sachs on Wall Street, where he traded currencies during the financial crisis. Ben and his wife, Po Lee, decided to return to Melbourne to start a family, and Ben rejoined McKinsey, where he was an engagement manager until 2013. In 2013, Ben became the Chief Operating Officer and Acting CEO of the digital assets marketplace Envato. He was recruited to Reece Group earlier this year. Please join me in welcoming Ben Chan.
Thank you, Kerry-Lee, for that very kind intro. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Hello, class of 2019, and hello, families of the class of 2019. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the final class to graduate this decade. It's pretty cool. Now, I anticipate that many of you have mixed feelings about graduating today, and one of those feelings is relief. Relief because you no longer have the burden of figuring out what you'll do with all that free time of yours. You folks still do about 15 hours of contact time, right, per week? That's like 3 hours a day. Another feeling I'm guessing you folks have is excitement. Excitement for the future, excitement because you get to carve your very own little story. My advice to you is to actively make things happen. When I was a teenager, my dad said something to me that would be instrumental for the next 15 years of my life. This statement would act as a goal, a challenge, and advice. He said, "Ben, you need to do an MBA at Stanford." It was something that would often scare me, but it would be the thing that would drive me for the next decade or so. Now, my dad gave me the goal, and it was my mum who taught me how to actively plan to make things happen. And they're both here in the audience, right here. My mum had to adjust my tie just before. So as a teenager, I wrote a letter to Stanford to ask what the criteria was to get into the MBA program. And I physically wrote a letter back when we had postage stamps. I know most of you don't know what a postage stamp looks like. And they wrote back with a bunch of guidance saying leadership, extracurricular activities, and academics and professional experience were the cornerstones. So off I went to actively get those things. Early on, I figured that getting into a well-known strategy consulting firm would be key to getting to Stanford. And to do that, I needed to come to the best university in Australia, Melbourne Uni, to have a double degree in commerce. When I got into McKinsey, I wanted a broad set of global experiences, so I was super active in my pursuit for that. I was relentless in calling and voicemailing McKinsey partners all over the world until I finally got myself onto projects in Asia and Europe. And my favorite project was consulting the military. But I had to pinch myself sometimes because I'd be sitting with generals and admirals talking about military strategy and logistics. And I'm this 23-year-old whose only military experience was watching Saving Private Ryan. So I finally got into Stanford, where I had the time of my life, learning from people all around the world. Doing an MBA for me was like undergrad, but with cash. And look, I believe I got into Stanford not because I was the best in anything specific that I did, but it was because I was active in my pursuit for my goal. After Stanford, I ventured to Wall Street in New York, where I traded foreign exchange for Goldman Sachs. I was there in the middle of a financial crisis, and it was just absolute chaos, and I loved it. I remember this one Thursday when national unemployment numbers came out at 8:30 a.m. And as soon as the unemployment numbers came across my screen, the whole trading floor just erupted with buy and sell orders. Buy $300 million yen, sell 200 million euros. We were just yelling at each other, lots of hand signals. At the end of all that, and the dust had settled, I looked down to my notepad and realized there was one outstanding order to buy 50 million Aussie. Markets have moved significantly during those few minutes. And for the next 30 seconds, my stress levels skyrocketed. I executed my trade, and to my luck, the market had moved in our favor, and we gained several $100,000 from a mistake. Now, I learned a lot of things during then, but one thing that has stuck with me since then, since leaving Goldman Sachs and the trading floor, is that in a work situation, unless you're losing millions by the second, it's actually not that bad. And that's helped me get through the last couple of years. So after Goldman McKinsey, I went on to become Director of Strategy at Envato, and I had ambitions to run a company. So I talked with the founder and said, hey, I'd really like to run a company. What would it take? And so together we worked on making that happen, and I compressed my role from 100% to 70%, so I could spend 30% of my time learning about new things, doing things outside my remit. 3 years later, I became acting CEO of the 600-person company. Now, a lot of this came from sharing my ambitions, seeking feedback, and actively managing for it. I didn't idly wait for things to happen to me. I actively went for it. Now, as you all go into the workforce, one of the things that you may hear from your colleagues is how the younger generation, you folks, can come across entitled. Now, I don't believe that is the case, but it is well spoken in the industry. And you probably can't change the perceptions of an entire generation, but what you can do is to change how others perceive you as an individual. And one way to do that is to get your hands dirty and do anything you can do to move the ball forward for you and your team. At Reece, we've got a great culture where every new person, regardless of level, when they start in store for several months to understand the customers, understand the product, understand our systems. And so I'm currently spending time in store, serving customers, stocking shelves, getting in a ute to deliver pipes to customers. Finally I get to park in the loading zone legally. If I can get my hands dirty, so can all of you. Be active, do everything you can do to help your team, and you and your team will go forward leaps and bounds. Now, I'm extremely excited for all your lives right now. You're about to write another major chapter in your lives. Actively manage what that looks like, and you'll be able to look on it proudly. Thank you.
On your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, I thank Ben for addressing us this evening.